and it's a part of the ReNew Foundation's Thought Leadership Program. At ReNew, we've always tried to bring attention to critical issues, be it climate, environment within that, gender within that, or sustainable growth. Broadly speaking, we believe it is important for us to work on these areas as we continue to work towards mitigating, our carbon footprint. Today's topic is especially relevant given that clean energy and clean tech is set to be the cornerstone of global recovery policies and programs in the post-pandemic era. So the march towards a fossil-free world is going to be even more important. And if we are to accelerate the transition to clean energy to guarantee a sustainable future, the role of disruptive technologies and innovations will be crucial, if not critical. So industry academia collaboration can definitely provide an impetus. I think there's a lot we can do by global collaboration, and that's the reason we have the panel we have today. And in a world during COVID, as we've seen, that there are no boundaries. Countries are working together seamlessly, and so should academia and industry work together seamlessly so that we find solutions for the problems we need to solve for. Over the course of the next 1 hour, we will try to find what are the barriers, what are the challenges, and what are the best practices we can look at and discuss and potentially emulate or even do better. There is need for coordinated, effective R&D in this space, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'd like to introduce the panelists today. We are really fortunate to have two academicians who are leaders in the most premier institutions in their respective countries. And I'd like to start by introducing Dr. Ram Gopal Rao, Director of IIT Delhi. IIT Delhi has for long been a cradle of innovation, producing some of the leading entrepreneurs, not only in India, but globally. So, big well done to the institution for really churning out some of the best. And also firsthand, I can say that the kind of industry academia partnership which is going on at the Institute is really commendable. So we're going to learn a lot from what Director Rao has to share with us. We will have Professor Sally Benson, who is the co-director of Stanford's Precourt Institute for Energy, the university's nerve center for energy research and education. She will be joining us. It's about 5:30 her time. I'm sure she's going to be dialing in anytime. So we'll wait for her to join. We're delighted to have her join in. And then we will be joined by Sumant, who is going to be representing industry and the perspective and the significance of industry to work with academia to push the ball forward in this area. Let me also introduce the moderator for this evening's session, Mr. Vinay Rustogi, who's the MD of Bridge to India. Vinay has been associated with the renewable energy sector as a consultant and financier for over 15 years. We could not hope for someone better to do this. With this, I'd like to hand over to Vinay. Over to you, Vinay. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Vishali, and it's a pleasure to be hosting this discussion. And a good evening to all the attendees. I think it's a very, very pertinent topic. As most people on the webinar would know, India has embarked on a very ambitious clean energy program. But the problem that we've been facing is that we are too dependent on foreign technology. And there is a realization that if we want to reap in all the benefits of energy transition, of this transition towards clean energy, then we have to have more access to reliable indigenous technologies. The problem is that we actually haven't been, as a country, very good in developing our own technologies, or at least that is the impression that most of us have. Put simply, India doesn't do a basic R&D very, very well. And particularly in the aftermath of Atmanirbhar and COVID, I sense this kind of agonizing debate in the country that we need to do more and more R&D in clean energy, But then who should do it? I mean, should it be the industry? Should it be the academia? Should it be the government? And there are various kind of proposals coming out from various sources, but still there doesn't seem to be any kind of consistent, cogent vision of the future. So I think it's a very pertinent topic. And let me start by you, Vishali. I believe that you are the kind of the force behind the foundation, as well as this collaboration with the academic institutions. So I believe this collaboration is now 1 year old. So if you can just talk us about what was the motivation in setting this collaboration, which actually predates COVID, I must note, and what has been the experience so far? Are there any key initiatives that you can share with us? Vishali, you
Yes.
are, yes.
Yes. No, I was saying as a host, I would love to listen to the views of others. But yeah, let me kick it off by saying that, as a leader in the renewable energy space, we've always been looking at ways to not only work on just running a business, but also looking at engaging in areas which go beyond business. This, I would say, is an area which is both a part of business and a little bit going beyond business as well. Because, when one is engaging with academia and in the area of research, you're also looking at industry, and you're looking at what you can actually, as we go about thinking about this, what is it that we can do for the country? What is it that we can do for the sector globally as well? So it's pretty broad based, but I think the main area was that, we actually have assets on the ground, and there's a lot of research which is being done. And often we have really brilliant minds who are working on research ideas in academic institutions. So the idea which kind of gave birth to this partnership was that we really do need to collaborate and engage so that we can bring both together and kind of make the one and one independent exercises as 11, right? And so it's extremely useful for professors and thinkers to come and see what's happening firsthand, and for us to benefit from the thought process and not only address issues which are immediate but also slightly long term, so that we can pave the way for the sector going forward as well. So with that, we started engaging with IIT Delhi, and we've come up with a few areas of work which we are looking at. One is around strengthening the Indian grid for the renewable energy future, understanding the effect of air pollution, something which we were talking about on renewable energy generation, and long-term studies on renewable energy resource availability. So after a lot of research and brainstorming based on what we bring to the table, what IIT can bring to the table, we narrowed in on these areas of research. We also look at how can this research be applied to policy as well, because that's extremely important, as we are also a B2G company and IIT really does enjoy a lot of access. So how do we bring industry, academia, with policy together to be able to find solutions? So, I mean, so this was the idea which kind of got us all engaged. And I must say that it has been, it's just the beginning, because there's so much more to do. And yeah, we're really excited about this partnership.
Yeah, thank you, Vishali. So let me turn to you, Dr. Rao. IIT Delhi is obviously one of the most preeminent engineering education institutions in India. Do you agree with me that Indian education institutions have been somewhat left behind in the research? Is there enough primary research being undertaken at IIT Delhi and other similar institutes in India? To what extent is this practice of collaboration between academia and the industry prevalent, particularly when it comes to IIT Delhi? I mean, do you use it actively? Over to you, Dr. Rao.
Yeah, thank you. And in fact, I must also mention that Suman Sinha is an alumnus of IIT Delhi.
Sorry.
He is he's an alumnus of IIT Delhi, and he's also one of the unicorn founders that way. So we have from IIT Delhi many alumni. who have founded these unicorns, and Suman Sinha is one of them, which is a matter of pride for us. And he's also giving back. There is a ReNew Power Center of Excellence at IIT Delhi. And as Vaishali Sinha mentioned, there are many projects where we collaborate with ReNew Power. And many of these projects are defined by ReNew Power. And then the faculty work, the solutions eventually go to ReNew Power and also are widely publicized to research papers. That way the knowledge is also disseminated. So we have a good collaboration going now. That's in a way, it's a kind of a nice academia industry collaboration, which is a model kind of a program for other industries to follow. Having said that, when you talk about the research, when you talk about any academic institution like IIT Delhi, we have three aspects to basically fulfill. One is the education part of it. Their IITs are doing excellently well. I mean, I would like to say that we are the best in the world when it comes to educating our undergraduate students. Just see, with just 50,000 alumni, how much of impact IIT Delhi has made. So these are all small institutions compared to many American universities, but despite being small, the impact these alumni have made is in fact phenomenal. So in terms of education, there is no saying that they are any inferior to anybody, and we're as good as anybody in the world. When it comes to knowledge generation, the second aspect of any academic institution, that is where the research comes into picture. The research is happening, and if you look at IIT Delhi data from the world rankings and all that, we are ranked in the top 100 in the world. So if you look at IIT Delhi in terms of research impact, where the papers written, how many people are citing these papers? The research impact is measured by QS as citations to the papers. So meaning we are writing good enough papers that people are citing these papers. On that count, we are in the top 100 in the world. So a lot of research is also happening. But the problem here is, the research is happening, but we are probably not, not able to take this research to the field as knowledge to wealth. That translation is very poor in India overall, and that is where innovation comes into picture. This innovation was something in IITs or in Indian academic institutions we never really bothered much. For us, the research was, there is some activities happening world over. You build facilities, you pick up the topic, you start publishing papers. So much of the research in India, the end goal was always publishing papers. If you have published a paper and if people are citing your papers, we are happy. All your whatever are the metrics for judging you as a researcher are all based on the citations to the papers. And that part also India is doing very well. In fact, if you look at the National Science Foundation USA data, which was released a few months ago, India is now at the third position. After China, after US, it comes India when it comes to knowledge generation. And we are also one of the fastest growing countries when it comes to knowledge generation. We are growing at almost like 11% as compared to the world average of 4%. So that way, I think a lot of research is happening, but where is the impact of it? The impact of it now, one needs to look at the innovation. The innovation side, we are not doing enough. I would agree on that. And the innovation is essentially taking this knowledge, applying it to a problem, developing a solution to the society, people making use of it. I think that is what is innovation. There we are always lacking, and the lacking because of the industry not coming forward, interacting with academia, taking these knowledge, using that knowledge to solve a problem. That has always been the biggest challenge. I was looking at, in fact, for this webinar, I was looking at all the energy related projects at IIT Delhi, and there are about 40 such projects, and about 20% of them are funded by industry and 80% of them are funded by government of India. Now, when government funds a research project at IIT Delhi or any other place, it results in some publications, but after that, nobody really is there to take it forward and do something with that. But when industry funds a similar research, they are interested in the outcome. They want to use the outcome. I think, that is how the innovation happens. I think to me, the biggest challenge in Indian academic institutions is the lack of industry academia connect. But then who is to blame for that? India never had any proper manufacturing base. And we were always importing technologies. And ReNew Power now is, for example, the ReNew Power projects are all, they are installing huge capacity in the field, whether it is wind or the solar. Now they are facing problems when they do that installation. For example, one of the problems ReNew Power is supporting at IIT Delhi is the effect of pollution on solar efficiency. That's very important for them. And also they are looking at now, if there is so much of ReNew power, if you start connecting all of it to the grid, what are the grid instabilities? That is again a very important problem. So that relevance of research is what is the big issue in India, because I think that's again because of the lack of industry academia collaboration. I think once you strengthen that aspect, I think everything will be fine. The only problem is the industry academia collaboration, which is missing. As a result, the research is happening, but the relevance doesn't seem to be there when it comes to looking at it from the society point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rao. I think that's actually very encouraging to hear. And I think the good news from the industry's point of view that there is a lot of research happening in the Indian institutions, and I'm sure Sumant is kind of very pleased to hear that because the Indian companies can easily tap into that research base. Sumant, we hear very often that the Indian companies are very shy of investing in R&D. In fact, these days one hears more and more about companies saying, well, the government should do this and the government should do that. Would you agree with that, that the Indian companies have not done enough on the R&D front? Can the Indian companies do more? How can we encourage the companies? Of course, they can tap into the research done by the education institutions, but how can we encourage the companies to kind of do more on their own behalf, plus work together with the academic world towards this purpose?
Yeah, thank you, Vinay. Look, I think companies will do whatever is in their best commercial interest. Unfortunately, most companies do not see R&D as being in the best commercial interest, and therefore they don't spend enough time, effort, and energy, and money, most importantly, in doing R&D. Now, if you look at India in general, there are, I think, 2 or 3 big issues with the Indian corporate sector, okay, which are structural in nature. Number one is we don't have a very large manufacturing industry. And therefore, because we don't have a large manufacturing industry, therefore, there isn't a lot of effort that is made to do R&D to improve manufacturing efficiencies or come up with new product development and those kinds of things that might typically require some sort of R&D. So that, I think, is one big issue that we are facing. The second issue is that we are basically appliers of other people's technologies. And that therefore really has been the mindset among most Indian companies, which is that, we take very well, we adapted very well, but we don't really come up with brand new things ourselves. So I think there is a bit of a mindset gap there, right? And also because we're not great exporters in the world of business as a country and as corporates out of India. Therefore, we don't have to develop new products for the rest of the world, which might require us to develop more cutting edge products. Because most companies sell in India, and therefore they're able to maybe not have cutting edge products that they might have otherwise have had to do. So I think these are some structural factors, right? And the other thing is that most companies also have this view that, look, if I invest today in R&D, I don't know when the benefits of that will come out. And therefore, it's very interesting that most Indian companies are driven by promoters who tend to have a longer term time horizon. But when it comes to R&D, there are only a few sectors where you see that mindset. Perhaps pharma is one of those sectors, maybe auto components is one of those sectors, but a lot of other sectors, we don't see this longer term mindset of saying, okay, let's invest money and position the company better for the longer term. There seems to be a more short term orientation when it comes to R&D. And that's a bit of a paradox, because otherwise most companies in India do tend to manage themselves more from a longer term than from a shorter term standpoint. So therefore that's a bit of a paradox to me as to why that happens culturally. The last thing I would say in that is that unfortunately most Indian professionals are not taught to put a lot of weightage behind R&D. And also people who go into the corporate sector, what is rewarded is this cookie cutter background. You go to IIT, you go to IIM, and so therefore that does not reward innovative thinking. It rewards a certain thinking within a certain set parameter, and that's really a function of our educational process in general. And because of that, Perhaps a lot of professionals in India don't really have a good appreciation for the R&D mindset and what innovativeness in product development can really do to you. And so I think those are some of the issues that corporates are facing, which is really which is in some ways, commercial, in some ways cultural, in some ways just a virtue of their upbringing and so on. And these are deep-rooted issues to deal with. So I think it's going to require us effort to overcome these issues. But I think eventually, as businesses start seeing that other companies are doing it and are benefiting from it, and they're generating value and deriving value out of it, then I think you'll start seeing more and more companies move towards the whole area of spending more on R&D. Now, the good news, as Professor Rao said, is that you have very good talent in the universities, in learning centers in India. It's a question of how can we bridge the gap between corporates and this great talent that exists, and try to make sure that this talent that exists is able to see the kinds of problems that corporate India is facing and best and most appropriately, research in those areas. And if we can therefore bridge that gap, then I think you'll start seeing much more valuable research coming out of the universities, as opposed to right now, where, as Professor Rao said, a lot of the research is driven by the government, which then goes into musty, files, I'm sure, somewhere in some dusty corridors, and then gets lost. Whereas if it is done by companies, corporates, which are doing it out of self-interest, then they'll want to get the best bang for the buck out of their research. So I think, therefore, we have to get more corporates to start funding more research, either on campuses or directly setting up R&D facilities themselves, where again, they'll be hiring people from the universities. And those people can then start going back and forth between university research as well as corporate research. So I think we need to have much more of that two-way flow beginning to happen. But for that, we need more of the corporates to start thinking about R&D being in their fundamental self-interest.
Sure. No, that's very useful. Now, ReNew is obviously the biggest renewable IPP in this country. You are working with various technologies, but the fact is that the technology landscape is changing very, very rapidly. Today we're talking about solar photovoltaic and wind. Storage is coming. Hydrogen will come at some point in future. We're talking about perovskites coming at 5 to 10 years down the line. And then at the same time, we are now talking about these protectionist forces and trade wars and other issues. Does it worry you that the lack of access to domestic technologies might in some way become like a business, like a major business barrier or a challenge for you and for other companies?
I don't think so, Vinay, because you see, as I said, one of the reasons we don't have good R&D is because we don't have a manufacturing sector. And so therefore, because you don't have a manufacturing sector, therefore, we're not thinking about the future from a product standpoint. People like us currently are just buying whatever is off the shelf, whatever is cheap, best, most technically efficient off the shelf from other countries. Yeah. If we start doing manufacturing in India, then willy-nilly, we will have to start investing in developing those technologies ourselves. And therefore, it is very important for us actually to put those barriers in place if we want to develop this industry in the longer run. Now, in the normal course, I'm not a big believer in barriers to trade, because that way the consumer ends up suffering most. But I think in the case of especially our sector, which is a new sector, here we have the opportunity of trying to really create a new sector where we can take leadership globally. And that's an opportunity that India should not pass upon. Now, yes, we are 5 to 10 years behind other countries. Now, can we catch up? I would hope that we can, but let's give it a shot. And solar is not cheap enough that even if you add on some extra cost to it, it's still very cheap. So therefore, I think we've got to a point where there is this unique opportunity for us to take the leadership in both solar as well as in storage, and really try to get to scale. Now, that's easier said than done, of course, because the scale benefit that other countries already have is so much bigger than the scale that we can ever get, that is always going to be a disincentive. And so therefore, we will need to make sure that the protections that are given to encourage that manufacturing industry are reasonable and for a good period of time.
Okay. Again, good. Thank you, Sumant. So Vishali, we heard from Dr. Rao that there is a pretty vibrant and thriving research culture at IIT Delhi and presumably other education institutions. There is this huge opportunity which is available to Indian companies to tap into domestic research and develop their own kind of strong competitive advantage against global competitors. Uh, do you think the ReNew, IIT Delhi, and Stanford collaboration could be like a role model for clean energy industry and indeed for other countries or for other industries?
Yeah. Vinay, so it's IIT Delhi and Princeton. So where we have collaborated, we have an MOU actually where when the governor was here, we had signed an MOU with the idea of a partnership between three organizations, and so we've taken a few things forward. And interestingly, it is quite a well-rounded MOU where it's about exchange of students as well for internships from Princeton. It's in exchanging ideas and kind of keynote sessions. As their faculty visit and as people from here go to Princeton, and then there is IIT Delhi and Princeton and ReNew. How can we work together? And so it's pretty unique, very different. I wouldn't say that there aren't such partnerships which exist globally. Of course, as we know, there are lots of and a lot of universities thrive due to these partnerships, and so we've been seeing and reading about partnerships across. Even US, China have partnerships of this nature. So yeah, definitely, it is a great model to emulate because you can actually save a lot of money by by doing research in this way, in a way, net if you look at it, because you have resources, you have assets here, you have R&D, you have the intellect here, and then you have the kind of the comparative global perspectives from other parts of the world which can be brought, and then as I said, assets can be used here for identifying issues, challenges more economically. Otherwise, you're burning carbon jet fuel by flying across, and not as much is done. So huge benefits of this sort of a partnership where you're using funds which are fungible, which are being given by international corporations on a topic, and the assets related to that topic are present in a different part of the world, and you're solving with the help of partnership of minds which are across continents, right? So in this case, say India and the US. So very collaborative, very fungible, and very pertinent. And I wanted to also add that in my earlier comments, I just wanted to say that leaders, when they commit to these unique sort of ways to come up with solutions, is very important. So in this case, I think both Sumant and Director Rao played a very important role in pushing this forward. Otherwise, often it is seen as a nice to do, but not necessary to do. And so I'd like to say that that commitment from the top, leadership, is very important. And that's what makes these programs tick, as we saw in our case as well.
Sure. Thank you, Vishali. I'll come to you, back to you, Dr. Rao. You mentioned that there is a lot of research already being done at IIT Delhi and mostly funded by the government. How can we make sure that that research is tailor-made to meet the requirements of the industry? Also, in the course of that research, have you, and now in the collaboration with ReNew, have you identified any kind of low hanging fruits where the partnership could be much more effective? And what are the challenges as well? We see the opportunities, but what are the challenges as well towards that effort?
I think, like I said, there is a lot of research happening, but it's all a matter of working on the right problem. I think you can pick up a problem from anywhere and start, you can spend your lifetime on that. And whether somebody wants it or not, it's not a big deal. I think very often we have a solution looking for a problem rather than a solution which is a solution to a problem kind of thing. So I think that is how things are, because most of our research today in academia, we pick up problems from the library. The first thing when a PhD student joins, we send the student to the library. The student reads 100 papers, finds what is the gap in some area, and does that research and publishes that paper. It is pushing the boundaries of knowledge. It is knowledge generation. Somebody somewhere is making use of all of that knowledge, convert that into wealth, and sell it back to us. So it is not that India has not contributed to all the advances that are taking place all over the world. There are people in this country who are working on perovskites, and they can achieve same efficiencies as anything anywhere in the world. But after that, what? They have demonstrated that, they have published a paper. That's it. It doesn't happen. It doesn't go beyond that, because, as Suman Sinha mentioned, there is no manufacturing industry which is coming to us, picking up that technology, maturing the technology, manufacturing it. That doesn't happen. As a result, all the demonstrations are happening, all the prototypes are being demonstrated, but it doesn't go beyond that, and that is the biggest challenge. Therefore, much of our research starts with library, ends with library, and that is what is the situation. So, and when you look at the rankings and all that, they are basically looking at that, what is that kind of a research. Therefore, we are ranking very well. I think at IIT Delhi, we are looking at now, can we pick up problems from the society? Now, there are so many issues in the society. In fact, if you ask me, all the world's problems are in India. If you are looking for a problem, you don't have to go to America and to find a problem. You just look around you, you find tons of problems. In fact, recently, some American Ivy League presidents, there was a call from some of them. They wanted to send some of their students to India, and they wanted these students to go to villages in India and stay with the villagers and find the problems there. How do the villagers live their life in these villages? What do they do? What is agriculture and all that? So they are coming to India to find problems, and our students go to US to find problems. That is what is actually happening right now. So I think finding the right kind of problems is where our biggest challenge right now is. And for that, we have lost touch with industry, because industry academia collaborations are very weak. We are also not interacting enough with the society. How do you interact with the society? You need very strong humanities and social sciences departments. I say that the humanities departments are our windows to the society. There are people in the humanities department who have analyzed the farmers' problem. There are people in the humanities departments who have analyzed the renewable sectors. And now they are the ones, are the people in the School of Public Policy. They analyze all these problems for the engineers. They come and tell us that if you can develop this technology for the farmer, the farmer's income can get better. This is the problem that the farmers are facing. So if they can give those problems to engineers, engineers can develop solutions. But even that link is very weak, because we thought technology can solve all the problems. So we never even built these humanities departments properly. We never even had enough of public policy schools on the campuses. At IIT Delhi, we are now trying to correct that problem. We have a very vibrant humanities department. The last projects, in fact, we funded with the last 1 month was, we actually told the humanities department, you go and interact with the engineering departments, you write a project proposal, institute will fund it. Institute will fund any interaction between a humanities faculty member and an engineering faculty member, because we want to connect the humanities departments with the engineering department, so that engineers will get to know what is happening in the society, and then somebody analyzing it for them, and these people developing solutions which can benefit them. And today, we don't even have to wait for the industry to come and interact with us and take that solution. The startups have become, the way to go for us now. So they almost every student on the campus, every second student, we recently did a survey, every second student at IIT Delhi wants to become an entrepreneur. So therefore, we don't have to wait any longer for any industry to come and take the solution. So startups is a way for us to put out those technologies into the society. So therefore, we have found that avenue now. And if you can work on the right problems, use startups as a medium, I think, we will be there where you see Stanfords and MITs and Berkeley's today. I think that is the only way startups is our future, for whether it is academia or economy or anything you talk about. I think the startups is the only way we can ever become, impactful in the society. And I'm very happy that it is happening. And I'm very happy that that ecosystem is building very fast now. And we are also trying to convert our faculty members into entrepreneurs. At IIT Delhi now, if a faculty member says, I have done this research, I have found this solution, IIT gives them a grant, IIT gives them a 3 year of leave. 3 years they can take leave from their job and to build a startup. and they can hold equity in the company, they can be directors on the company, they can be chairman of the boards, and they can do all of that now. Because in this country, the problem is Lakshmi and Saraswati, we always refuse to see them together. The rich professor in India is like an oxymoron. You will never hear about, even if you see a Bollywood movie, you will never see a professor shown as rich. A professor is supposed to be with a jeweler and all of that. So that is the kind of a mindset people have built now. So what is wrong in which a professor who has done a lot of research, starting a company and becoming a billionaire? Nothing wrong in that. But that happens in US kind of a system, like any normal kind of a thing. But in India, there are so many rules and regulations and all of that. At least at IIT Delhi, we have removed all of that now. We have special incentive schemes for faculty to become entrepreneurs now. So when faculty members do that, the PhD students will do that. And that is how the whole ecosystem for deep tech innovation will happen in this country. And in my opinion, that is what that needs to happen.
Okay. So I think those are very refreshing ideas. Just very quickly, anything that you picked up while working with Princeton as part of this collaboration or on any other initiatives? What are the global best practices? How can we kind of still nurture this collaboration, working with industry much more for mutual benefit?
I think, IITs, we have many collaborations with various international universities. There are many best practices, which is, in fact, we offer a joint PhD program with University of Queensland. And one thing, last time when I was talking to them, I said, your administrative staff should come to India and conduct these, training programs for how to, actually do the documentation and all of that. We are all very poor in the documentation in our academic institutions now. And that is also the reason why when you write a patent in India, very lousy patents, anybody can, copy them and overlook them. I think that is a part that we need to learn from them. So we always are in a hurry to publish our work, because as researchers, if I have found something new, I mean, the sooner I can get it published, the happier I am. And that is how it works. But then there is also, the intermediate thing, which could be protecting your IP. If there is a grand idea in that paper, can we not protect that IP, and can we not, commercialize that through some other means kind of a thing? And that is where the patenting culture we are also strengthening now at IIT Delhi. 4 years ago, we were filing 30-40 patents per year. Now, last year, we have filed 153 patents per year. And this year, we will be crossing 200 patents per year. I think, unless you protect this IP, startups won't happen. When you start a company, if you don't even own IP, nobody is going to touch you with a barge pole. I mean, no investor, nobody would even look at a technology company which doesn't have any IP on the technology that they are commercializing. So patenting is very important, and we are very late entrants into the patent game. That is something that we have learned from all these universities abroad, and now we have established those practices, and now things are happening. I think now we have close to 1,000 patents. This year we have crossed the licensing fee that IIT Delhi earned this year in 2019, the financial year, is about 1.2 crores. For the first time, we have crossed 1 crore mark through licensing. And I think then, now we have built teams for commercialization of this IP. So things are progressing. Like I said, we were too much focused on only writing papers. We never bothered, we looked at it as the end of the whole thing, but it is only a beginning. Writing a paper must be the first thing towards the final societal impact. I think that realization has set in now in academic institutions in India, particularly at places like IIT Delhi. Now, I think, another 5 years down the line, you will see, companies coming out, companies making an impact, people talking about them, and you see that ecosystem building in the country.
Okay, Dr. Rao, I think you've given us a lot of positive ideas and thoughts on how this can work better and scope for Indian technology development. Now, I think a lot of people have been waiting on the webinar. We must throw the floor open to them and give them an opportunity to ask some questions. So I do have a question here, which is, how can what would be your ask from the industry, from the government and from the civil society for fostering more beneficial industry, academia, research partnerships? What is your expectation from the government and the civil society? I will throw this open to all of you. Please, let me start with you, Vishali, and then we'll go around.
Okay, sorry, Vinay, I was just engaged in trying to see Sally. I think We're still trying to get her. Maybe she overslept. She joined the pre-call. So that's the only thing I can think. She's been so enthusiastic. So I missed the question. Can you just repeat it for me, please?
Yeah, no, sure. So my question was, what would be your expectation from the government and from civil society in fostering this culture of research, and particularly the way the academia and the industry work together?
Sure, absolutely. You know what? Let me just take an example. We are working, and then once again, this comes from Director Rao. In one of our meetings, which we had, Center of Excellence reviews, he had suggested that why don't we work towards, engaging more women in energy. It was just a statement he'd made. And then we got to work, and we engaged with UNDP, we engaged with various other CSOs, and we've come up with a brilliant program, which is a women's accelerator program for women in energy, where UNDP is a partner, IIT Delhi is a partner, ReNew is leading this program, and we have a couple of other CSOs. And so what we're going to do is we're going to identify programs and ventures and startups who are working in this area of, broadly speaking, circular economy, renewables, sustainability, etc., and provide them with a small grant to help them take their ideas forward. So yes, again, a good vision, ability to execute and engage. And as a part of our program, we will be engaging with the government to make sure that we can somehow tie this in with various schemes which they have, where they can encourage. So it's going to be government, international organization, academia and industry, CSOs, all coming together to engage more women, which is to address. So, these are ways in which you can really work collaboratively and engage all key stakeholders. And this would involve a lot of research in identifying venture startups. It will also involve, kind of making it interesting for other women to get into this, because there's an incentive now as you're getting a grant. So, it's a very nice way of broadening the players and important players in this area. So not directly industry academia, but industry and academia have a big role to play to make these things possible. So these are some of the ways I would say. And going back to Director Rao's program that, India really is, and some of the developing countries are really playgrounds for action. Here's where we can take action, whether it's relating to climate or social impact or any of these areas. So we really need to leverage it ourselves a lot more, and compared to kind of others who seem to be leveraging it a lot more. So those would be my points.
Thank you, Vishali. Since we are running out of time, so I'll just move on and ask a different question.
I will just like
please, Dr. Rao. Yes.
No, I would like to see government, become a matchmaker. The academia and industry. We have been waiting in this country for academia and industry that marriage to happen as a kind of a love marriage, and that is not happening. I don't think the love marriage has happened 50 years. Nothing much really happened. 10% it used to be 50 years ago, the academic industry funding in academia. Even now it is only 10% in academic institutions. I think government needs to now bring academia and industry together, and they need to support arranged marriage basically, so that you find love subsequently. That is how it actually works in Indian marriages. So I think government needs to play that matchmaker role, create schemes where if academia and industry collaborates, if industry puts in 1 rupee, government should be able to put 2 rupees into that. I think these are the kind of schemes, the incentive schemes government needs to create on a large scale, which will incentivize industry to come and interact with academia, and over a period of time things will happen. They see that everything is fine and a lot more things will happen. I think government needs to create more and more incentive schemes for industry and academia to work with each other. There are some schemes. There is a Prime Minister's Fellowship Scheme where the PhD students are funded, who work between industry and academia. But we need more such schemes right now at the national.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just welcome Sally, and if it's okay with Director Rao and Vinay and Sumant, if we could, and also with Sally, extend this discussion by about 15 minutes because Sally is joined. Is everybody okay with that?
Of
Sure,
course.
sure. Of
Yes.
course.
Excellent. Sally, thank you so much for coming in. And I've already introduced you. Really appreciate your coming in. What I'll do is we've had a bit of a discussion around the topic with respect to how industry, academia, government can work, how they're working in India. I'll pass it to Vinay to probably, ask you a question on the global part of it. So thank you for joining, Sally. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. I apologize if I'm late. On my calendar, it wasn't even starting for another 10 minutes. So many apologies if I've been late.
No. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Sally. But let's continue the discussions and really welcome.
Thank you so much.
So very good morning, Sally. Let me just fill you in just very key highlights of the discussion so far. So I think what we have discussed is that there is actually a lot of primary fundamental research being done in the Indian institutions, but the culture of sharing that research between the industry and the academia has never kind of really existed. Also, it's been done more from a theoretical viewpoint rather than applying it in the real kind of business day-to-day context and developing useful applications for the society or for the industry. We also did discuss about some of the best practices, particularly patents, funding grants, etc., that are being a lot of initiatives being undertaken by IIT Delhi, as well as some of the other institutes in India now. So if you can, Sally, particularly from where you sit, US institutions are the hotbed of technology development. To what extent, can there be useful cross-border relationships with India or with other countries, particularly in the clean energy area, which is at the cusp of a technology revolution? And is there work already happening on that front, to your knowledge?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a huge opportunity for cross-border engagement and interaction, and I think that there is quite a lot happening today, but it's a little bit ad hoc. It's not necessarily strategic. It's not necessarily aligned with government agendas and industrial agendas and even faculty agendas. So, I think that looking forward, I think there's a big opportunity, ideally with support of government, to formalize some of these collaborations, and in particular, formalize collaborations that would extend in duration, over, very minimum 5 years and better, 10 years and longer. And I've been thinking a lot about this question that you asked, how can governments and industry, more closely align their work? And there's no one thing at all. It's really a system that gets built up over decades. It's even a multi-generational, set of relationships, for example, where students do their research and they're engaged with companies who are either partially supporting their work or partially just being very familiar with it, and then those students go to the companies, and then they work their way up the chain in those companies. And then they remember the very positive interaction that went on with the university, and they then are inclined to look back to the university and support those programs. So the question is where do you start if you want to build a whole system like that? And I think the first thing is to really think about creating enduring relationships, because it's not just about, plucking out, the best idea on a one-time basis, because technology development doesn't work that way. You have a good idea, you try to make a go of it, it's not quite perfect, and you need to continue to improve it. So you need that engagement again with the universities and so forth. So, you know, I think if there were a possibility to set up a number of joint research institutes with, you know, strategic intent to support the buildup of capacity and businesses, you know, in India, in the United States, or with Europe, or that would be a very good start, but with the clear idea that it would be enduring. But having said that, I mean, one of the challenges I think often is you create a new institute and the funds are set up so that the leadership gets put in place, and whether you stay on the pathway to get that close collaboration, you know, sometimes isn't necessarily monitored or reevaluated or assessed to see how well it's working. So there needs to be, you know, once you set something up, that is just the very beginning. You need to have the process of continual evaluation and improvement, and I think that you know, peer review and competitive approaches to allocating resources, that those are also parts of this critical system that you know, eventually can emerge if nurtured for, you know, on the time scale of a decade or so. So I'm not sure if that answered, but you know, I think that would be a positive first step. But again, so often that everyone just wants to start something, and really it's in how it's executed. And maybe I'll add one more thought, is these relationships or these partnerships are really about relationships, and both on the side of the universities as well as on the side of the companies, people need to understand you need to invest time, the time of their people. And so the people who are being asked to sustain these relationships, they need to know this is really your job. This isn't your part-time job. This isn't, oh, you've already worked 10 hours a day today. And oh, by the way, make sure that that's a good relationship. You know, it needs to really be built into things. And our experience is the companies who understand that and invest in their people so that their people can really deeply engage, those are the companies who really benefit from the investment of resources and time and relationships.
Okay, Professor Sally, in the interest of time, I'll ask you one more question before we go back to Q&A. Can you think of any priority areas where technology collaboration with India, with companies like ReNew and IIT Delhi, etc., could be beneficial, particularly in the clean energy space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you know, energy storage is a critical one, and perhaps not so much in short-term energy storage, because you know, there's lots of technology. It's a very competitive space. So I think that long-term energy storage is really a critical priority. Mm-hmm. I also think that, you know, in the long run, if the vast majority or all of our energy system is going to rely on, you know, solar panels and wind turbines, and, you know, it's not going to be sufficient to have the expertise for manufacturing, you know, limited to a very small number of places. You know, once that renewable energy is central to global economies, just like in the traditional fossil fuel industries, it was always viewed as very desirable to have, you know, significant capacity to produce your own. You know, there are economic benefits from it, but also strategic, you know, benefits from that. So I think even in the area of, you know, next generation solar energy, I think that alternative wind technologies right now, wind turbines are just getting bigger and bigger, higher and higher. And there are certain circumstances where that's great, you know, for very large scale, you know, utility scale applications, but there may be other generations of wind technologies, you know, that could be more appropriate in more rural environments. So to me, wind, solar, long-term storage, you know, and even short-term storage, these are all critical. The other area that I think is very important is systems integration. Because the reality is that renewable generation is today often the least expensive option that you have available. But integrating them into an energy system that provides the reliability that you need 24/7, that can support running factories, that can support the communications infrastructure, is very, very challenging, and it will continue to be for a long time, particularly as we think we're going to have electric vehicles, all of heating, cooling, everything is going to rely on this high quality power. And so systems integration, I think, is a real frontier where advanced computational algorithms, large scale data management, that we're just not really on the cusp of coming to grips with what it will take to achieve our goals of 100% clean energy while preserving cost effectiveness and reliability.
Thank you, Professor. And I think those are very, very relevant applications and technologies in the Indian context. There is a question which I also actually wanted to ask. We have spent a lot of time discussing how can the academic world produce more research which is relevant for the industry. But what about the industry itself? I mean, how can the industry help you by funding or otherwise in terms of building more bridges, better collaboration, producing more viable, useful research? And I'll throw this open to all of you actually.
Yeah, maybe I'll start just quickly. In the United States, the way the system is set up is for graduate student research, master's research, and PhD level research, that it's required to support, in science and engineering, basically the students are supported to, while their studies, their tuition is paid for, and their stipend so they can live is paid for. So there's always a very large motivation and appreciation for faculty, universities to work together with industry to support that work. But there's really much more than that. There comes a transition in every research where you're starting to think about deployment and how would it actually work in the real world. And typically in academic organizations, there's very little knowledge or skills or capacity to understand those issues. So that's really where the know-how of the universities, of the companies, really comes in, or manufacturing. It might be that, some technologies work great if you want to make them at a tiny scale in a research lab, but that manufacturing would be very, very difficult. So that's where these partnerships come in. And again, I think that's really where these boundary organizations like institutes come in, who can really facilitate that interaction. Because it's also easy to sort of get it wrong, right? If the industry is investing in very, very fundamental science, it's going to take too long for them to see the value. So it doesn't really help. And if the government is investing in very late stage technology, that doesn't really make any sense, because the university will not be able to take it anywhere. So this orderly transition between more government-sponsored fundamental R&D and more industry-sponsored, application-focused research, and managing that concert, that exchange. And again, that's where really the industry needs to be present, and also within the senior part of these companies, that it needs to be present. Because if you ask someone to do a job and they have no ability to make any decisions, it will also be difficult. So this needs to be an important job at the companies.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Sumant, if I pose that question to you, how can the companies help? And in particular, the Indian companies in the clean energy space?
Sorry, I think it comes back to issues that we've been discussing so far. Companies, I think, have to understand, first of all, where they can add value in terms of doing in terms of supporting or doing research of their own. unfortunately, companies, especially in the clean energy space in India, don't have a lot of research capabilities. And so therefore doing it on their own is at this point is going to take a long time. And so therefore we really have to reach out to the IITs of the world and the other academic institutes and see what kind of research capabilities exist there and how that can be relevant to us. So I think there is an onus on companies to reach out and talk to a number of institutes, see what kind of research is happening, see what kind of capability is there, and then really figure out how that capability can be redirected, can be retasked to come up with areas that are necessary for companies, in our business rollout. And that's in a way what we've done with IIT Delhi on our setting up our center, because, when we started off engaging with the professors there, we found they were doing a lot of very good research, but not a lot of it was very relevant to our requirements. And so therefore it took us, a lot of engagement to actually come up with 3 or 4 research areas that were relevant to us. And even so, I would say they are fairly futuristic from our business standpoint. They're not immediately relevant to us. But even to get the professors to that point took us a lot of conversation, a lot of dialoguing, because they were really wanting to do more fundamental research. And so therefore, just to pull them out to a little bit more things that were application oriented took us a lot of effort. But nevertheless, we bridged that gap. And that is really what companies need to do with, I think, a lot of the institutions. And I think, therefore, to one of your earlier questions, what are the things that the government can do? I think the government can set up more platforms for more structured engagement of this nature, rather than have companies reach out to every institute and then, using contacts and whatever, insights they may have. It may be a better way for the government to actually organize forums like this. And I know that academic institutes also organize, days where industry days where corporates are meant to come in and engage. I don't know how much corporates actually, how deeply they actually engage. So I think it has to be a bit from both sides. And this is really where the government can come in and play that facilitation role as well.
Okay. One of the attendees has actually spotted a book in your background, Sumant, Fossil Free, and asked a question. Is there, does the book actually talk about academia, industry relationships? And have you personally looked into this aspect a bit more?
No, thanks for that great spot, although it's quite obvious. But nevertheless, no, to be very honest with you, I haven't dwelt as much as I should have on the whole issue of R&D. I've talked about manufacturing, but I've talked less about the issue of R&D, to be very honest. It is something that I perhaps could have dwelt on a little bit more. But I think, as I had said earlier, I think the first precondition is we need to have more manufacturing. Once we have that, then automatically you'll start seeing people investing in the R&D part to make sure that the lines continue to stay competitive in future years as well. So I think, to me, manufacturing is the first step. Let's get that done. And then I think R&D will follow almost in parallel to that.
Okay, thank you, Sumant. I think in the interest of time, we should close here. Personally, if I just try to conclude this or wrap it up in like 1 or 2 minutes, my observations are that it's been a very, very heartening discussion, first of all. I started the discussion by saying that there is a huge technology or R&D deficit in India. And I'm very pleased to say that I'm corrected. There is a lot of technology work undergoing in IIT Delhi and other institutes. The need of the hour seems to be to find the relevant applications, identify the right areas, and then to build the bridges with industry. Also, very pleasingly, Dr. Rao mentioned about this kind of huge and very thriving culture of startups, students going into the industry, faculty being encouraged to develop new businesses. And then Professor Sally, of course, talked about this huge opportunity for international collaboration. And then again, how the government can kind of pitch in with the right ideas and act as platform for the effective relationships. So I think there are lots of reasons for us to be kind of very optimistic. There is a huge room for opportunity for growth and doing much more. So with that, on that positive note, I will pass it over to you, Vishali. Vishali, you are muted.
Yeah. No, I got that. Thanks a lot, Vinay, for that moderation. It was very, very well done, very smooth. Appreciate it. No discussion is complete and enjoyable without a great moderator. So you did a great job. Thanks. And thank you, Sally, and thank you, Director Rao, for some excellent points. I think it's institutions like IIT and Stanford which act as torchbearers for cutting-edge research. That will actually help advance, R&D in not only in our sector but in various other sectors. So thank you for taking the lead, and thank you for sharing some great ideas and identifying, more importantly, the challenges which are there, which need to be addressed, so that we can do what we are doing better. And I think this is just the beginning of, I think, other engagements which will follow. We hope that we can work together, ReNew, Stanford, and IIT, on a project, on many projects as well, because I think that's the way to do it. And definitely, I think lots to be done. I think these are early days. And so I see like a little bit of a kindergarten section and a little bit of a high school section here. And so we can definitely learn from the mentorship here from, how has it worked? I mean, the world watches Stanford for the brilliance in this area. And I guess, as you rightly pointed out, and as Director Rao pointed out, that having startups in the neighborhood is an advantage, because, that definitely kicks off the journey and the engagement. And the good news is that Gurgaon, I think, has more startups in India than anywhere else. So, so we have more hope. And on that note, I'd like to thank you, Sumant, as well. I always tend to forget you, but thank you for the points you made. Very relevant. And we look forward to many more engagements. But till then, stay safe, stay well. And thanks for joining, everybody. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the team which organizes these sessions. It takes a lot of effort. So I appreciate the team at ReNew Foundation, which put it together. Apologies for some confusion in the time, but either ways, you had to get up very early, Sally. So we are sorry about that, but we loved having you on this conversation.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Vishali. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.